It's an interesting moment, and I pardon the old age, but need this. And I remember when old people used to say, my, how the time flies. Come on. It's hard to believe it. It's been 20 years since I spent 20 years in this building. Coming down in 1987 and spending 10 years in the Senate, and then leaving there and going to the county commission for 12 years, and then retiring, I thought, and finding out my rep was leaving, and Sherry and I having a conversation. We enjoyed the Senate so much, why don't we go back? So that's what we did. And, well, it's a long story, too. That's why I needed the 10 yields. But if you don't mind, I'll take you through a little bit of my history, because I think it's kind of I find it interesting. Back in 1986, when I was elected, I was the Oregonians' upset of the year. I was elected in a district that had 13% more Democrats than Republicans, and three-term incumbent senator, and I won by 6 points. But I also, like some of you freshmen from time to time that I've talked to across the years, I've found it an interesting experience to be here, and the challenges that are here. I never knew that I cared about hairdresser fees, but 500 letters later I did in '87. And I remember trying to figure out how to deal with all this stuff I didn't have a clue about. And one of the people that I turned to was someone I thought kind of knew some stuff about this place. Some of you will remember Ted Hughes. Wonderful source. And I thought he had two pieces of advice that have meant a lot to me across the years. Because I asked him what to do when I had these people asking me how I was going to vote on stuff that I sometimes didn't even understand. And he said, well, number one, you must always tell the truth. And then in his shy, kind of wily way, he says, but you don't have to tell them everything you know. And then he said the other thing was that I probably ought to ask them who their opposition was and have a conversation with those. And I think that's served me well, and I've appreciated the opportunity for a dialogue and differences of view. A thing, too, that was interesting about the Senate in those days, it was before some of the changes occurred, and we used to have 2 and 3 nightly receptions for the first 2 or 3 months. And it was a wonderful time to get acquainted and get to know one another and to lobby about our bills. And that was a transition that was difficult to adjust to when I returned here. And most of us had social hours at our offices. We had sometimes adult beverages from about 5 to 6:30. And, Joan Dukes would bring her guitar sometimes and we'd sing songs. Other times we'd talk about our families, and other times we'd negotiate bills. But it was a great and special time. And then I had the privilege of moving into the majority in '95, and I got to be the Business and Labor Chair. And a couple of things that were really neat about that, I found out being a chair can be a lot of fun. Because in the previous 4 sessions, each session there was a war between the credit unions and the bankers. You don't know anything about this, but it was, or anyone, it never happens with other groups. But I remember calling the 2 lobbyists in separately and saying to them, you either fix this or something bad's going to happen to one or both of you. When's the last time have you seen them fighting with each other? That's pretty cool. It was really neat. And the same thing happened with mobile home tenants and mobile home landowners. I called their lobbyists in and had the same conversation. I think we're on tenuous ground these days. That's an awkward, difficult one. But it's lasted for a long time, because I think the reality is we do better when we work together. And some other things I'm proud of is in 89 and in 87 and 89, out of my experience of the terrible atrocities of child support payments, we changed the laws and made collections, and we saved, I think, a lot of trouble, and a lot of money went to kids that was not going there like it should have. And I'm real proud of that achievement. I thought that the transition to county commissioner would be a little easier than it was, and I was surprised to learn something. At the county commission, it was a remarkably different job from here. Here we talk about houses in general, and property in general, and rivers and this and that. When I got to the county commission, people looked me in the eye and they wanted to know what I was going to do about their house and their neighbor and the garbage can that the neighbor has and all kinds of interesting things. That was a tough journey. But then it was finally time to end that journey, and Sherry and I were retiring and looking forward to goofing off. And then I found out Wayne Scott was going to retire, and we thought, well, we had so much fun, let's go back. So we did, and it was an interesting thing. It was a tough campaign, and I came in a bit wounded from some of the lies, and I learned that campaigns were even nastier than I had remembered them. And I remember also realizing things had changed. A couple of people wondered about the fact as I started to bring in some adult beverages for my cabinet. And then another thing that changed, and that was Greg Matthews, one of my favorite people. He and I had co-sponsored a bill on campaign reform. And it was interesting to me, as he suggested in my freshman year, that maybe it would be better if he did the presentation, that it had a better chance if maybe I didn't say something. And that was a difficult revelation for me. And I think speaks to some of the things that we ought to be thinking about in here. I must say a highlight was when we had the 30-30 split in 2011. And I had a great time co-chairing Business and Labor with Mike Schaffler. Some people thought we were a good team, some people thought we were atrocious, but we had a good time. And I guess in these last 3 terms, I've become increasingly concerned about partisanism and inequity. And as I leave, I guess I would encourage the majority party, which so very frequently and fervently calls appropriately for fairness and equity in our society, to consider that maybe we ought to look at that also within this body. So as I retire, I want to challenge the majority party, which includes many wonderful and special and talented people that I love, to consider a little bit of the admonition to practice what you preach. And to my Republican colleagues, I would suggest being careful not to continue to polarize and withdraw from the process or attack. Somehow, I'm hoping that this body can find better ways to work together and to serve all Oregonians in a straightforward manner. It's been an honor to serve. I will miss walking the hallways and meeting with the many wonderful people that I served with and the citizens that come. And I hope that the battles of the future bring members closer together and focused on making Oregon even better for Oregonians. And my thanks to you and to the voters for the honor and privilege of representing and serving 20 years in the Oregon Legislature. There are many special people and special moments that Sherry and I will cherish forever. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Representative. And if I may, thank you, Sherry, for all the years of helping him and helping us.